And only you can let it go. That's the thing. So you can spend your whole life, therapy is great. I think there's all different options. You could spend a lifetime in therapy. So the more, it's like, how much do you want to like dig? That was something that I learned from my transformational work is like, it's not about the digging, it's about letting it go. Sometimes you have to like peel back some layers. And then sometimes you just have to get happy at some point.
Welcome to Making Change with Your Money, a podcast that highlights the stories and strategies of women who experienced a big life transition and overcame challenges as they redefined financial success for themselves. Now here's your host, certified financial planner, Laura Rotter.
I am so excited to have as my guest today, Carla Salteris. Carla is a healer, self-love, and energetic alignment coach for midlife women. She has a diverse background in mind, body, and soul healing and transformational work. Carla empowers women to let go of the past and line up energetically with new, empowering beliefs that match their desires. She believes that by connecting to your inner guidance system, everything is available to you. So welcome, Carla, to the Making Change with Your Money podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura. So happy to be here.
I'm excited that you're here and, interested in seeing where this conversation takes us. And I'm going to start like I always do. Carla, what was money like in your family growing up?
Well, in my family, I came from a hardworking, my father's side, they were farmers. So if you go back, Appalachian farmers on the East Coast, like Pennsylvania. And so there was really a hard work ethic. My grandfather was a coal miner, and my dad was led there to join the coal mines, and he decided that's not for me. And he pursued other things. But definitely there was a money, you had to really work hard for it. Like, it's like you really had to deserve that money. On the other side, my mother's side, she grew up in Trenton, New Jersey. So it was like very city hardworking, young blue collar. I think my grandfather was a shop owner. He's French Canadian, but he, it's like every nickel and dime counted. So it was like you really used both sides, really used everything, but there was a sense of you really have to work hard, and there's probably not a whole lot at the end. Things were tight, but a really full, family full of love. On the other side, my dad, with that, embracing nature around us. We always had animals and having spiritual connection to the oneness. So that was really rich.
There's a lot there, Carla. I generally follow the train of thought of the money, but before I go there, I love what you just said, the spiritual connection to oneness. How was that communicated?
So if we were in the garage with my dad and there was a bee in the garage, he would say, "Carla, don't be afraid, let it land on you." And I was like, of course, terrified, like let the bee land on me, it's going to sting me. But he was giving me such really powerful information. Now that I look back, as you get older, you really appreciate those things. They weren't church people, but it was like a nature church that my dad was always showing me how to communicate with animals, but it was really teaching me, how to not be afraid. It's like that took me into like indigenous medicine. It's like, the world's indigenous cultures and all the before is like, if you really look, it is more about love and abundance and overcoming fear.
So true. And it sounds like your father was one of the first people to teach that to you. And just to get back to the money piece, when you say things were tight, how did that impact you? And do you have siblings? Should I ask?
I do. I have two younger brothers. I'm the oldest, and I have one brother that's 10 years younger, and then one that's 18 years younger. So it could be mine, really.
Yes.
Yeah, as far as, I always helped with the family business. My mother's a teacher. She branched off. She had her own tutoring company. She still does. And so I learned that, I always worked around the house because it's like farmer mentality. I always did chores. I always worked. I mowed the lawn and it did things, that one needed to do. And that I always knew that I would get what I needed and I would be rewarded. I had a beautiful childhood. I had a woods that I was, free to go in and out of back then. We just with my dog, I would wander in the woods and come back out, Thank God.
Yeah. No,
But,
you didn't worry in the same way.
it was the 70s,
Yeah.
in the 70s, that was not an issue. It was a beautiful thing. I always felt safe. I had a really beautiful childhood because I always felt safe. Money might have been a little short, but you can't buy safety. That was amazing.
And it sounds like in some ways the scarcity wasn't communicated to you in a way that made you fearful, or even that you felt like you needed to be earning your own money, or did you have that pressure?
I just got transported back to my childhood when we were talking about that. But when I always worked. So it was embedded as a young kid. I always helped, and I think that's really important for us mothers and fathers to instill that. I'm doing that with my daughter right now, actually. She's 12 and talking about money and getting her a credit card. But like some things aren't paid for, right? Some chores are not paid for. But I've heard this, someone was talking about this on Instagram. There are gigs that can get you paid, like in showing her that there's like ways to earn more money. Like if you go mow the lawn, that's kind of above and beyond. Or if you go mow the neighbor's lawn, now you have a gig. And so training the kids how to like go out in the world and make their own money, important, I think. So I'm trying to do that right now. Like, what are some good gigs?
So you worked in the house with your family, which you didn't necessarily get paid for, but it was a sense of work ethic. Everybody contributes.
And eventually, as I got older, I did get paid.
Okay.
And then it was like the family business. I could choose to work there too. But it was always like, I guess when you do your work, it's like, is it something you love to do that seems like fun, or does it feel hard because you really don't want to do it?
Right. And when you were growing up, where were you in that? Did you feel like you just loved to contribute to the family, or?
Well, as you get older, I felt like it was more of like something I didn't want to do, and I left.
Got it. So how old were you when you left, and what did you leave to do?
Well, actually, I was in and out for a while, and I actually was going to acupuncture school in New York City, which I believe that's where, New York for you.
And you grew up, I'm sorry to interrupt. So you grew up more in the
The
Pennsylvania.
DC area, like
DC area.
Northern Virginia, right now, Maryland, Silver Spring, Maryland. My dad was in the military. So before that, we traveled around the US, but we landed here on the East Coast in the DMV. Well, I made it work for me. So I would come back and I was able to work with my family business and get my master's in acupuncture school, which was really cool. I had the freedom there. Yeah, to pursue something, more in line with what I wanted to do. But I still had that sense that I was still following in the line of what I was supposed to do or what my parents thought was a worthy, area to go into. Because when I was growing up, it was like English or math, like pick. My mom was a teacher.
Right.
And that was with good intent, like if you want to, artist was out, artist, no, you can't be an artist. So it's like whatever you thought, you think is possible. It's like, and how to make money at it. Is it going to be something fun? I think that's the dream. Is it something that's fun for you, or is it something that is a chore and it really becomes hard work because you're not enjoying it?
Right. And so before I go, because are you implying that? So I was going to ask, what drew you to acupuncture school? What skills that you had, or was it the idea that that would be a relatively lucrative profession, so it didn't otherwise speak to you? I'm not,
Well, yeah. So the journey and into that part of the conversation was like, that's how I got to know energy. And that's how it's like, it took me on a road to learning about energy and really about mindset, about what you're putting out into the world to like bring back whatever, attract whatever you desire, right? Like whether that's the job or whatever. It's like we grow up in this, kind of limited scarcity thing around money, around everything. And it's supposed to be kind of line up the way that we were taught, whatever that looks like. And when you learn about like your whatever energy you're projecting out, and you can get back to you. So like in acupuncture school, I learned more about like being in my body, learning how to move energy, or to that everything is connected, the body, the mind, and the soul. And the soul is really that part of you that is like dreaming, feeling into what you really love to do, and following it or not. So that was one of the things that drew me into the work that I do now. But
Right. So what I hear you doing, and we will continue certainly in our conversation on that point, is looking back and seeing what that learning contributed. What I'm curious is, there you were leaving home. I don't know who you were at that point, whether you were math or English, but what made you say, oh, acupuncture school, that's what I'm studying?
well, what had me do that is I started out in psychology, which was more of a, normal profession. I couldn't go the route that I wanted to go without them not helping me go and pay for it. I did it, acupuncture, I paid for myself, but the road to what had me, follow that is my interest in Chinese medicine. To go back, I was always interested in energy. I had found that I actually had gone straight into psychology after high school and had a degree in psychology and women's studies, only to find out that I didn't want to do psychology, because psychology was like, okay, you put people in these boxes like this, and then mostly you prescribe. If you really want to make good money, and then you pursue that. And I was like, well, that's not really what I want to do. I'm really interested in like my own transformation. So I was doing transformational work in landmark education, and it led me to really get into my own beliefs and start to look at that. And then it was like, oh, well, it goes through your body, it goes through your mind, and then you have the feeling that there's something out there that has your back, like the universe, that you actually are part of that. It's not something separate. Society sometimes has different ways of communicating that, like in church. And
Yes, like there's some old man up in the sky that's like the daddy figure. That's
exactly, especially for women, it's kind of like it's what it's like, at least for me it was, in my women's studies, I was kind of like, wow, yeah.
So you got your bachelor's undergrad. Is that where you did sort of?
Yeah, I had my bachelor's in psychology and women's studies, and then I went on to do my master's in acupuncture, still kind of thinking that was something that like was good to do. Even though it was interesting to me, it really wasn't like passionate. Like I had done it for a while. I was actually a shiatsu practitioner before that. So like it was just an extension of that. But the beautiful thing about Chinese medicine is that they don't separate all that stuff. The physical, the mental, and the spiritual. It's all one. Where our society, in Western society, we kind of divide it up. And as if we're supposed to like deal with it separately. It doesn't work that way, right?
And where did your interest in body work come from? I mean, you mentioned your father and the bee and nature. I mean, do you see that as the driving factor? What?
Well, what's really interesting? I was as a manager in the nutrition department at Whole Foods Market in Baltimore.
Okay.
Because after I discovered that, it's like psychology was not it. I actually was going to school at the same time, I think, that I had that job. And a friend of mine, we traveled down to an herbal conference in North Carolina, and it was all the big herbalists, American herbalists and some European, a lot of Native American influences gather at this conference. And on the way, we stopped, and my friend was like, oh my God, my back is killing me. Carla, will you give me will you help me out? And I started working on him. He was like, oh my God, you're so good. I was like, really? It was as simple as that idea. I was like, oh,
Interesting.
okay. And then since I was working at Whole Foods, I was working with Chinese herbs and, we were getting trained on all this stuff and getting paid to go.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
fascinating.
Back when John Mackey was, hanging out with us, it was pretty cool. I got to go on a road trip with John Mackey in
Wow.
California. Yeah. It blows my mind. I'm seeing him on social media. I'm like, oh my God, there's John Mackey.
And even I hadn't even thought about that, right? I'm also someone who's, if you will, victim of like get a BA, get a master's, pick a profession that like, oh, you could study herbs. You could, that there's a whole world out there if you decide that that's what you're going to specialize in, that it's not just, herbs. They're interesting, but you could go to a conference with herbalists from all over the world. So it certainly put you in a different space than the BA in psychology and women's studies had you in. Got it.
Well, and that just made me think about as women, we get, we're living our lives and we're supposed to do this, and then we start families. And then it's like all of a sudden, it's like, what happened to me? Like we find some things and it's like, I think I could go to school forever. I mean, there's so many things to learn. I swear. I mean, I really could. I really have to just be like, you know what, Carla? No. I mean, because there's so much to learn. It's like, but when you actually just allow yourself to like, without the other voices, like I had my parents' voice, like, and I love my parents. They thank God they were there. I don't know what I'd do without them, and it's like, but it's hard to separate all those things, it just took my friend to say, you're good at massage. And off I went. I was like, I think that's my calling. I mean, if you think I can do it, then I think I can do it. But it's like when we get
right, that's true. We want outside affirmation that it's an okay path to follow, and it's a path we can follow. And were you already where were you in terms of financial security as you made that decision? Did finances play any role as you pivoted from a more traditional path to a less traditional path?
yeah, well, an acupuncturist, they're medical professionals. It's still like it's a good job and you can get paid. Now, back when I was doing it, insurance was not very friendly to us. So they really made us work to get paid. And eventually I left it for that, but also for COVID, really. I mean,
Oh, interesting. That's true.
I actually kind of just found that I need to take this to another level. Like it got boring for me. And like I love it and I still use it, but it's like, we're supposed to expand. I think it's like, just because we hit middle age, all of a sudden we're thinking of our death. It's like, no, it's like, instead of that, it's actually like an opportunity to like start a side gig. What's that passion that you have that you never thought? Like, I know that's what you support people in, like women, is like, now it's your turn.
Yeah, and I think women more than men sort of hit midlife, and perhaps you have less responsibilities in the home, your kids have gone, your empty nest, and we really have the opportunity to rethink and recreate. What are we going to do with this next half of our lives? And frankly, I'm looking at my mother-in-law at 91 and a half years old. Like, we have a lot of life ahead of us. So how did that play out for you? It sounds like it was during COVID that you started to.
Yeah. So, well, I also had my little one was littler then. And I had an in-home practice. And so when COVID hit, also I had to rethink some things. And I thought, you know what? And I had been in offices and worked other places outside the home. And I just thought, I need to shift something here. And sometimes it's just getting bored with what you're doing, and it could be like a life career, or it could be, there's so many different, things to do. And we live in this country where it's like, and this time where it's like, not only is there endless possibilities of what you could offer or study, or, and get better at and offer services for, is that you have the world at your fingertips. Here we are on Zoom, which is
I
freaking
know.
crazy.
Right. It opens so many things up, right? You could work with people across the country, if not across the world, depending on what you do.
Exactly. Like I go to Greece every year for like a month to 2 months. Not a problem. I mean, it's like, I live a life that I love. It's like, what do you want to create? It's really amazing.
So how did that start for you though? Because of course it's amazing and it's frightening as hell. So
Yes.
what was the first step you took, which I'm sure you say the same thing to women you work with, which is one step at a time. If it's a bigger vision, it could be really frightening and keep you from doing anything. So what was the steps that you started to take?
So the steps are like, you don't have to change anything when you have that inspired moment. Maybe you do, but you can get your energy where you want it first. So, like, it doesn't matter if it's a job, if it's a love relationship, like, take 6 months and get that energy solid so that it's like you embody the faith, you embody the knowing of where you're going by becoming it now. So things are shifting energetically, physically, mentally, you know, starting to allow in your own inner guidance to lead you different places because you know where you're going and who you're becoming. You're holding this vision for yourself. So you don't want to like quit your job right away. You don't have to just like cut everything off. It's like, but when you live in something that's in a reality that's not looking around at your circumstances now, when you have this like powerful vision and knowing energetically, and this takes a meditation practice, no doubt. It doesn't have to be complicated. It just has to be something that you presence to yourself because you've had these voices, you know, the good wolf and the bad wolf, whichever one you're feeding, right? And you have to start distinguishing which one you want to listen to and what that voice is really your voice, universal voice coming through, and that becomes you. And then you start doing things in the world that reflects that. And then you start attracting these like people that are like, oh, you like photography? I need someone to to photograph my house I'm selling for $2 million. Would you do that? Like things start happening, and it's like anything is possible. I see this all over the place with women. It's like they love photography, and then they start doing it. One of my clients, and she starts, just enjoying it, putting it out there. Part of it is putting it out there. So when you're developing this internal thing, it's like the courage to actually go, yeah, that's what I love to do. That's what I do.
So like you could use that woman as an example, or anyone that comes to, when you start to work, first of all, when someone comes to you, what kind of problems are they coming to you with, and how do you start to work with them? And I guess one of the questions that came up for me, I wrote down, you said you have this powerful vision, and I'd have to assume that not everybody has a powerful vision of where they want to go. So what's the process?
So the process is first identifying like where you are right now. And a lot of that is like, what is like the bad wolf been telling you? What are these like core limiting beliefs? And it's something it takes time, right? It's not something that you can just, because we've had, I just turned 53. That's a long time of, it's like that goes away, but you start to distinguish, oh yeah, that's my, that's that little, victim voice that, it's like the little inner critic. Thanks for sharing, but I'm, refocusing over here. That's why it's so important with the body, mind, and the soul, is it's that you actually are feeling it. It's the feeling that we're missing. You can be in your head all day long, but when you like stop that thought, you grab it and you embody it and you feel it in the moment, and you're conscious of that you have control over your own reality because you're doing it over and over. It's just a new practice. So when you start to do that, you start to feel it and you start to make different choices because you start to see where you're going. So creating a roadmap is the next. Like, what's this roadmap to my fulfilled, extraordinary life that I want to have? It has a new business. It has a awesome love relationship because I love to travel. So I want a travel partner. It has prosperity because I have, kids. I want to leave them something. I want to leave a legacy, but I want to really enjoy my life now. And, the money, it's not really, we have money has a lot of stories, of course, around it, right? I mean, it's like we're talking about that this whole time. It's the freedom that we want. It's the freedom that the money brings. It's not when we start to train you to take the money out of the equation and you take, of course, this is what you do. You take the stories of the love, whatever the subject is, you take those stories out, you replace them with new stories. So you're embodying the freedom of you start, picking things that you want to do. Like for me, I really want to go on one of those Viking cruises. I really want to go do down. That's what I see myself, multiple Viking cruises a year. That's what I want to do. That's my next thing, it's okay, I know it's going to happen, but so that's that thing every morning is you're building that confidence, you're building that, and it comes with experience, right? It's you can't go from, victim to empowered person. You have to do that. And in the process, you're loving yourself so much that you're becoming this, who do you want to be? Seeing some other people that you're oh my God, I would love to have what she has, or business wise or love wise, that would be really cool. I need a guy like that. It's like the world is your oyster, but you just have to choose and make more conscious decisions about what you're choosing and not just what we're bumping up against. I've been there, done that, just it's not just you want those to be empowered synchronicities because you have this new mindset, soul set, body set, you have this new feeling that you're walking around with, that you're attracting something different than just oh God, I just, wish I could find someone. They're never going to show up. Well, yeah. Then you start attracting all those losers, or I don't mean in a bad way, but they taught me something, but not aligned at all. And I knew, what I'm talking about.
So it's interesting, Carla. I'm going to ask, because you're saying a lot, what you're describing, and I know you again to be someone who teaches an embodied practice to a certain extent. What you're describing sounds still a lot, which is where we all live, up here, right? So and also you're describing in such a way that it's clear that you've done this work and continue to do this work. So what's the mix of, right, self-talk, positive self-talk, and a deep embodied practice that you do specifically?
So is working on worthiness, getting to the root, what are the stories that the experiences that you've had, the traumas that you've had where that you felt guilt or shame. That's the root, right? We all have them. A lot of women that come to me, it's reproductive choices that they've had, they've made, that it's carrying something, maybe they had an adoption or an abortion or something, it's carrying that weight all your life. Is no one to talk to about it is hard, right? Anything that has those kinds of core negative emotions, we want to it's that's just the bad wolf. It does no good to dwell in guilt and shame. Talk about a possibility squelcher. I mean, it's holding yourself underwater. And unfortunately, the mental health system that we, I would argue that that's a soul trauma. I've done some work with curanderas, and it's just you talk it out, but you actually let it go. And only you can let it go. That's the thing. So you can spend your whole life, therapy is great. I think there's all different options. You could spend a lifetime in therapy. So the more, it's how much do you want to dig? That was something that I learned from my transformational work is it's not about the digging. It's about letting it go. Sometimes you have to peel back some layers. And then sometimes you just have to get happy at some point. Who thought it could be that easy?
Is part of letting it go? No, because right, there's so many different messages. Part of the message is certainly if you try to let it go by pushing it away, it just comes back. So is that part of the embodied practice, to take it in, to feel it and let it pass through you? And what are the strengths that you personally, because I can again feel the passion coming from you, that you personally bring to this work? Do you think, of course, you've done it yourself, that's part of it, but like, who are you as a person that you feel like gifted to do this
So as a
work?
person, I think I've experienced a lot of these things. I've been through a hard breakup. I've had an abortion. I know what that feels like. And we know what to do with these things and how to transform them. That would be my gift. Like, I know how it moves through you. I know where you have to be energetically to like let it go. And the things that are coming out of your mouth and what you want to create, like, I know how to like help shape that and like so that that is something that comes up out of the person instead of keeping it down.
It sounds so appealing. I still keep wanting to like, how do you do that? How do you do that?
You got to work with me. That's how you do it.
So first of all, if you had, we all do, all us solopreneurs, like the avatar of your ideal client, who's your ideal client and how do you structure the work?
So my ideal client is really midlife women. They could be moms, they could be single, but they're looking for love. They're looking for, it's like life has gone flat for them. It's like, what else is available to me? And I'm here to tell you everything is available, and it might not seem like it, but if that's something that interests you, I work one-on-one. I usually do like, to test out the waters, I do like a VIP day so that you can kind of get like in there and get like kind of the root causes of what's going on in your story and what would be possible. But then I also have some group programs. I have one coming up in September. Getting underneath and having like that, the self-love and the worthiness piece is kind of like the core of what I want people to start. And then I also have like a longer 12-month program where it's like, then you can really, it's like start to move through that stuff and get in there in a community of women that are going through the same thing, which is awesome. And making new friends and making new connections. And, it's like, it's a process. It's a becoming.
It really is. And it's work, right? Because change is not easy.
Yeah. And when you get those moments, though, it's like empowering because it's like this brand new world is opened up for you.
And when you work one-on-one, Carla, is there a minimum period of time that you ask that people work with you? Do people pay monthly? How do you structure?
So what I do right now is I do half VIP days, like 4 hours, and I do 8 hours.
Wow. That's a lot of time.
Well, no, not really. I mean, 8 hours is ideal, but you can, I'm sorry. I see what you mean. Like at one time, I make it flexible. If you can't do that, then I can do it into like a couple days. But I mean, when you start to get in there, you don't want to break the momentum of getting in there. You know what I mean? It's like if you do 1 hour here and 1 hour there, it's like you kind of like repeat a lot of the same stuff. It's better just to get in there and say, oh, okay. And then things start to come up in longer periods of time, like 4 or 8 hours. But 8 hours not for everybody. So you can do 4.
And that's on Zoom? That's also
on Zoom.
Wow.
And it's recorded so you can go back and look and say, oh, I wonder what she said. And then, you're doing the inner work. You're doing the journalism because only you can tell you what's going on in your mind. And it's like, I'm here to kind of like support and like let that come up for you and let it go. That's the goal, right? Little by little and like create. Now, what are you going to replace that with? Because it's like you let that go, but that's not the end. Okay, that's just the beginning. What do you want to create and fill with that? Whenever you uncover one of those limiting beliefs, it's like, what are you going to put in place of that so that doesn't live anymore? And you start feeding that new empowered story because 53, I got a long life ahead of me, baby. I got a lot of stuff to create. I am not done.
And so then after the VIP day, are there exercises that people are left with? Homework? What is?
Yeah. There's homework, there's meditations, there's, they can continue working with me in my group programs or one-on-one. I I keep it limited, but I have some one-on-one time, like 3 months.
And I see, again, I've said this several times, how this lights you up. It's clearly, your life mission. I'm curious how it shifted. I do always like to, end my conversations with a sense of how you might have defined success, in 2020 when COVID hit, and how that might have shifted, if at all, since then, both financially as well as however else you define success. A very loaded word.
How it shifted. So for me, I was able to like shift body and mind, doing things. I was doing things differently then when I was doing acupuncture and that. And it was more of a, limited. I can only see I had a story around money back then. Okay. Where like I had to get paid hourly and I was in competition with everybody. You know what I mean? It was like a scarcity thing. And doing something that I like to do, but I wanted to do something more evolved to who I've become. And so now that's constantly evolving, right? But I have a freedom lifestyle now. It's like I can work anywhere I want. I can go on vacation, but I can still work and work less and make more. Here's a concept. Back in 2020, it was not that way, you know? And we have all these gifts. We don't even aware that we have them until someone goes, "Hey, you're really good at that." You're like, "I am?" Okay. Like sometimes it's just as easy as that. Or you like really love doing something and you're like, "God, I really love doing this." And then you realize I'm really good at this. Like I actually could start doing this more and less of the stuff that I don't like doing. Or I could set in motion a plan of like, in midlife, we have all these things. We start talking about retirement. We start, it's like, how do you want to live out the rest of your life? You actually get to create it. And, I'm at this level, but I'm looking at another level, another version, Viking version.
That's your experience life cycle.
That's right. I'm pulling in, what else? What else? When you start to shift, and you can start with the little things. Like I was just thinking of an example. Like when I look at my cat and from across the room and he comes charging at me and then comes over and just like does this on me. Like those are the little nuggets that you just keep putting them and make a big snowball. That's how you build this mindset. It doesn't have to be like, winning the lottery is also possible. You got to play to win. But, it's like when you start viewing through that lens and not through life is hard, I have to work, like that we were started in the beginning. And we only get this through our life experience. So thank God for that. That's how we know we want something different.
Yeah. I mean, I what you just said so resonated with me, Carla. I am now looking towards my cat, and I've really come to recognize that like the universe has gifted me with love. I also have a dog, but this cat in particular lives in my office. I do yoga in my office. He'll come and snuggle next to me. When I meditate, he won't sit on my lap, and I have shifted it. And again, it's not work, but it takes the recognition, because it could be like, I'm meditating. Would you leave me alone? But instead, like, what a gift that I have this unconditional love from this soft, warm, furry creature. And to recognize that's a gift that the universe has given me, and take it in and feel it. And also recognizing that my go-to is often a victim mentality. Like, again, let's see if I could tell this joke quickly. The construction worker every day is, sitting on the construction site and bitching, "Oh no, cream cheese and olives again, cream cheese and olives again." And at the end of the week, the coworker says to him, "Tony, stop complaining. Tell your wife to make you a different sandwich." And he's like, "What wife? I make it myself." Like, complaining, "I'm working too hard. There's so much to do." And it's like, wait, this is your business. You've created this. Don't be a victim of it. own it. What can you change? What can you do differently? And, I'm a woman, so I don't know otherwise, but there is sort of a feeling, again, probably unworthiness. I'm supposed to be busy, whatever is coming up for me. And it's the first step I always feel as a mindfulness practitioner is just like, okay, notice that.
And if you can notice it the way that you do
You're
with a big smile on your face, that's the best. I mean, you're doing fantastic, right? Because it's often, I mean, I still will bitch and complain and find things that but then I'm bitching and complaining. Okay. But not beating yourself up for it. And that's where most of us go wrong. Is like we go, oh, I'm doing negative thinking again. It's like you're human, but you get more practice at it and then you can laugh at it,
Exactly. So as we, wrap up our conversation, Carla, is there something else you'd like to make sure you share with our listeners? And I'm certainly going to put in, if you share the link with me, the sign up for what you're starting in September. And I see you also have free gift that I will include the link.
Okay, great. That sounds great. Actually, I wanted to mention, I think animals are a really important part. We started talking about but I actually incorporate that into, we have so much to learn from animals. So if you're an animal person, you might be my person.
I mean, animals are present
I'm so connected with them, right?
So how many pets do you have?
You don't even want to know. Okay, well, I'll tell you real quick. I have a dog, Fiona, and we go for walks every day. And then I have a cat, Chibu, who came from Greece. We actually brought him back from Greece. He was a feral cat. He's humongous. He's like a Greek cat. Feral he's got some major genes. He's probably like 20 pounds. And then I have a rabbit, Rudy. And then we are getting another rabbit, a friend for Rudy, a girlfriend this weekend. So but they each have different energy and it's like different things come up, when you're staring at like a rabbit who's like a prey animal, some people who work with horses, the same thing. It's like this different energy. It's like you really learn a lot about fear from what you're, projecting versus a cat who they're not scared of you, but you get scared of them. And you're like, oh, should I, it's a different energy, right? It's just really interesting. I find it really.
Dogs are pure love.
Dogs, they don't care. They love you anyway. What do you want me to do? I'll do it.
I always wanted a dog. We finally got one during the pandemic, Gus, and I have a cat who we had before, Barbosa. And, having a dog, I have to say is, everything I imagined it would be. It's just lovely to have someone make eye contact with you and just look at you with such open love. It's really very nice.
You're the center of my universe, they're saying. You're the center of my universe.
So I love this conversation, Carla. Again, I will include your information in the show notes, and you're leaving me with a smile on my face.
Oh, that's great. Me too. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed our play and conversation today. Thanks, Laura.
Thanks for listening to Making Change with Your Money. Certified financial planner Laura Rotter specializes in helping people just like you organize, clarify, and invest their money in order to support a life of purpose and meaning. Go to www.trueabundanceadvisors.com/workbook for a free resource to help you on your journey. Disclaimer, please remember that the information shared by this podcast does not constitute accounting, legal, tax, investment, or financial advice. It's for information purposes only. You should seek appropriate professional advice for your specific information.